So Vidya Dinamani, close friend, compadre, product person, CPO, community organizer, co-founder, Southern Hemispherite, sports rival.
Not directly. Our countries are sports rivals.
Well,
Well, actually, we win all the time. So does
how
that
did
make you a
well
rival?
you used to? Do you follow the All Blacks?
Only when they win, which I guess I must do because that's all the time.
You do know that they got humiliated in the last World Cup.
Unlucky. It's just unlucky. You had a hometown advantage. So,
Do do you know, if I can take us to a dark turn, do you know how New Zealand got rid of COVID?
um, by having some common sense, having a fantastic female leader, and
Need
I
more
love
of
the way that
those?
we do need more of those. I mean, she essentially said, "Hey, look, if we're going to get rid of this thing, let's all just together take this seriously," and we did. And it's gone. I was talking to my family, and life's back to normal. I'm so envious.
So are they just keeping people out?
hmm They're keeping people out. So if you're not a New Zealander, you can't come home. You can't go.
I
So
can't
there's,
believe this
it's
world we live
amazing.
in.
I know. I know. It's crazy, isn't it?
Are they doing quarantining?
2 weeks. You get off the plane and you get escorted by hazmat suits to a hotel. There's that's basically guarded, and they feed you and house you for 2 weeks, and then you can come back and you're a member of the society. It's like some sort of science fiction
I
show, isn't
just
it?
sometimes I contemplate how did we get to this?
I think this is the future. I think there's going to be many more of these things.
Do you think that New Zealand had the size of its population as an advantage, or the fact that
I
it's a
think
tiny island drifting in outer space?
a tiny but powerful and mighty island in outer space, actually in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, no, I think isolation definitely helps. It makes it easy to close off your borders. But I honestly do believe it's just, we're very sort of pragmatic, but pretty laid back, kind of if you can stereotype us as a population. And common sense tends to rule the way. Like everyone, you grow up and it's like you get a heap of common sense and it's better like you better keep that because if you don't, you better just leave. So
I feel like Americans always tell me that they have a best friend who is South African, and I
I
feel
have
like
one.
South Africans are always saying they have a Kiwi who is a best friend.
Yeah, I think we stick together. It's
How
fantastic.
so speaking of sports rivalries, how do the Kiwis feel about the Aussies compared to the South Africans?
We would lose to a South African every minute of the day before even contemplating a loss to Australians.
We share a
So you
common
just see me go
enemy.
serious? You see that seriousness? Yeah, that's right.
I love how that just came out. No, that's how we feel. We feel like when the All Blacks beat us, we feel respect. When the
Yeah.
Aussies beat us, we just feel disdain,
Shame. You disdain and
shame,
shame.
shame.
Yeah, yeah. How could this happen? How could we let this happen?
Well, I just for the record want to remind you that we did win the Rugby World Cup last year. South Africans.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you.
very happy for you. I'm glad it wasn't someone else.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk to you about two things that you brought to my attention recently. Was that you wrote a book, and for technically oriented people who don't spend their lives writing books, I think it could be fascinating to dig into what that process was like for you.
hmm
I am writing a book.
Oh my gosh, I can tell you so much about what you should not do.
I want to hear every word. And then, secondly, I know that you have a prolific presence through Ad Astra in the female startup community, and actually not just talking about it, but making a huge difference. But so you're on some boards, right?
Mhm.
So I thought that what could be interesting also was for us to discuss if and when CTOs want to consider board positions, potentially what you've learned and what wisdom or experience you can impart on us.
Sounds great. That sounds like two fun topics.
And that means we're not even going to get to product market fit.
The thing that we talk about all the time.
I do feel like we've got that covered a lot in previous episodes. By the way, I was going to tell you that we have done the CTO studio now for about 3 years, and our top 2 episodes, well, let me put it this way. Our top 3 episodes are product related.
Yes. I'm so excited. Because that's what you're doing. I mean, I believe it, because at the end of the day, it's what goes out to your customer. You're building it for someone. And so if it's about product, it's all about how do you get to that right product market fit, build a product that customers love, and then you sell more and you get successful. So yeah, I'm so glad to hear that.
And so the top 3 product, and then the top 2 of those is you're on the show.
That's so exciting. I did not know that. Wow.
In
You
fact,
just made my day.
you're number 1 and number 2. So I think the first one was around the gig economy show we did with a few of us.
That was fun.
And then another one was you talking about product. So yeah, I think even as I help companies, it's just so hard to always pull yourself out of the technical stuff and just say, what about the customer? Why are we doing this?
But you do that a lot. Like, we work together, obviously, on several types of projects, and you do that. You, as a technical leader, are constantly in service of why are we doing this and who are we doing this for, which I think is why we work so well together, because we share a common purpose and a common need for the outcome. Yeah, I think that's why we like each other.
I have a theory that most startups who want to hire a CTO should really be hiring a product person and then hire the CTO. So here's my theory. You build the product, you scrap around, you get the outsourcing team, you offshore it, you spend your last dollar to get the product market fit, and you establish it somehow, and then you start adding customers. Then you're thinking, oh, I need a CTO. And I actually have a theory that says you do not need a CTO, you need a product person. Because the voice of customer now becomes this loud, annoying voice that, no, I had plans to do this, and I did it, and I got customers, but now I am worried because now they want me to do all these other things. And I actually have a theory that says go from scrappy, get a technical advisor, so someone who is just there to maybe vet the sprint designs, someone who loves your company, is technical, but is not in the day-to-day. Then you keep going with your process, but I think if you insert a product leader into your process, you can 5x, 10x your output because you're focusing your dollars on product. And then when it comes time to scaling the team and attracting amazing talent, and then you've got some equity to work with, and some then you hire the CTO. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I love that. I think it's brilliant, because people often want to get leaders in place, right? You get top heavy pretty quickly once you get funded, and you feel like you need this leader and this leader. Whereas what you said, I think, is so key. You can surround yourself by advisors, and maybe this links to that second topic where we're talking about the board, but giving yourself access to people who've been there, done it, and can just tell you very quickly how to shortcut, how to make good decisions and good strategic decisions. And then you've got a team that can actually execute, is the right way to go. So going to a product person, and I agree, often teams get pretty big before they hire a product person. The CEO tends to be the product lead. And so they do all the calls, they make all the calls. And that is the time to bring in someone. And it can still be an execution, it doesn't have to be a leader, but someone who's just fanatically obsessed about bringing that customer voice to the table. And then what you do is everything you build is in service to the person who's actually going to buy it versus in service to this great idea that you had.
Do you think that inserting a product person into a dev team is fair? And for instance, when it comes to sprint planning, I feel like product people can manage that.
Yeah.
I don't always feel like CTOs can manage sprint product planning because there's the scale of customer feedback and all the work that has to be done, and staying true to the roadmap isn't always, like I said earlier, it's not always the first thought. And if it is, there isn't that natural inclination, I think, to service the customer.
It's interesting, because I think it's people's focus. And what I like about when we talk about Agile is that everyone has a role. And so people can get deep into the role that you have. And I think as a technical leader, having to manage the technology, having to think about how everything works together and it stages together is enough of a job, let alone saying, okay, now I've got to do the second job of product. And so on a team, sometimes I've seen it work where you could have your subject matter expert, have someone come in and act the role of a product owner or a product manager if you don't want to hire that person, but have it be someone who's actually working with customers. So you don't have to go out and hire lots of people if there's not a lot of money. Find someone on the team who's already thinking customer. And then, shameless plug, we have training that tells you what to do and how to become a product manager on the team very quickly. And within 3 months, you can be a product manager because you just have to know what to do. And the person who's always thinking about customer and is interacting with them already is the right person on your team to point to. I wouldn't pull out someone technical to try and do that because you're trying to split their focus, and that just is really difficult for the person and it's not great for the team.
So this is Product Rebels?
Yeah, it's Product Rebels.
And did you say that you wouldn't recommend technical people doing it?
No, I absolutely would. I'm saying don't give them two jobs. I just basically say, and if someone on your team who's a developer or a QA loves the customer, is fascinated as the person on your team who's constantly asking those customer questions, I would say go get them trained and then give them the product owner job. But just don't make them do two things because I think that split focus makes it really hard. And at the end of the day, and this is true for all humans, you're going to do the work that is the most urgent. And so often it's the technology. If there's something broken, if there's something that needs to be attended to in terms of the next release, you're going to go there. You're not going to say, I'm going to sit back and spend 3 hours talking to my customer. It's just natural. It's not anyone's fault. And I just think that's not a good thing to do.
Yeah, I was on a call this morning with a team of engineers and we spent, I think, 88 minutes trying to decide if we should build the ability to delete a user completely as a command line tool or as a super admin web interface.
What to decide?
88 minutes. We decided to first build the command line tool and then wire it up to the admin interface. Boom! 20 seconds. Except that took us 88 minutes this morning. Yeah, I think that if there's one thing technical people can do really well is just sort of talk themselves into just a knot. And it's because there's just so much to consider, so many implications. And I think, and as I've worked with you, just sometimes the simplicity of the question, just boom, oh, clearly that's what we want. And therefore that solves the problem. So I do love working with Vidya Dinamani product managers.
It is mutual.
So let's talk then about that second step that I suggested, which is the advisory board. I have a couple questions about that specifically, and then just about how you approach those invites in general. But firstly, when I'm joining, so clearly there's a difference between an advisory board and a board of directors. So for the advisory board, should advisors be paid to be on the board? And if I am invited to join an advisory board, should I expect, and is there a way to ask for payment? And should I be asking for payment?
Yeah, I think that this is your time. I mean, clearly, if it's an advisory board for a friend or a non-profit, then no. But if it's a for-profit company, this is your time and your expertise. And so you should be compensated. And I think that there is absolutely no reason not to be. What I usually think about, and I've done this a few times, is give it a 3-month run and say, I think this is somewhere I can help and add value. I believe that this is a good fit for the company, and you really want to like the team. You want to really believe in the CEO. And in working with them over the course of a few months, you can negotiate the terms. You understand the financials, you understand what the business looks like, and it's usually some small part of equity that's vested. And so you're not going to get, I don't usually ask for money because the companies aren't ever in a position to pay. But if you're going to stay on and you make a commitment to help them, and you negotiate how many hours does that look like, what's the work look like, what can they expect from you, then I think you can come very quickly to terms that you both feel great about, because you don't want this to be the last thing on your list because it's an unpaid role, and you don't want to resent having to spend time on it. And for the company, they want to know that you are as vested in their success as they are. And the best way to do that is a small amount of equity. And then just be really clear. It's kind of how I think about mentors. A long time ago when, you and I had corporate jobs and you'd have all this, even now I think they talk about mentors. And it seemed to me like everyone wanted one, but they never really knew why and what they were there for. And so it's exactly that kind of relationship. If you're going to advise, you are giving your time, your energy, your expertise, and you want the company to be really clear on what they want from you. And so when you get both of those expectations set, I think it's a great match.
So a good follow-up question is, you've approached me to be on your advisory board.
Mm-hmm.
How clear can you be about what are you expecting or hoping to get out of this type of relationship?
Yeah.
And then to add value to that, or sort of a monetary value, which then gets paid either in terms of compensating for your time
Mm-hmm.
or a little bit of equity.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have a question about this 0.5%, 1% approach.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that I mean, a company would have to have a massive exit for that to be a valuable thing, right?
Mm.
I mean, help me understand the 0.5%, 1% for advisory style compensation. How do you feel about that?
So it depends on how much time. If you're giving, usually for an advisory position, I would think about it probably 4 to 6 hours a month. It wouldn't be much more than that. It's a couple of meetings, it's some follow up, it's perhaps going to one meeting a month with the team. And so for that amount of time and something that you care about, I think for me, it's probably more like 0.25 up to 1.25% roughly for advisors. And again, that's vested because they want you to stay. uh, it feels that I think that's a reasonable exchange because of the time. If it's more than that, if you're spending 10, 15 hours a week, then you really should be thinking about, is this a position on the team, not an advisory position? Which kind of leads me to sometimes an advisory position. So many people I know started off advising and then actually said, I love this. I want to be on the team, and I'm going to take a different position. I'm going to be on the team full time. And now it's a different relationship. But it's a great way if you think you like the company, you think you like the team, you can add value, is to jump on. And I think there's not enough CTOs, frankly, as advisors. I know you started that conversation. Most of the time it's legal, it's business, it's marketing. There's a little bit of product that's starting to come, I see more of, but not much technical, because they've got technical on the team and everyone feels like they must have a CTO. They don't necessarily have someone high level, architect level technical that's advising them. And I think that relationship should change a bit.
I love that. I think that's why I'm saying, obviously, with 7 CTOs, I am in many, many, many conversations around founders wanting me to help them find a CTO. And 9 out of 10 times, I just let them know, you know what, you're very close, but really honor the work you've done up until now. Make sure you add the technical advisor, but definitely make sure you're strong on product if you're a product company. And then when you need to start inspiring teams, building out experts, senior engineers who need that style of leadership, yeah, well then bring in Mr. or Mrs. CTO.
Mm-hmm.
And so what about boards of directors? Can you help? How is it different, and how should we look at it differently?
It's interesting. From an advisory role, I feel that's a lot more commitment. It's more time. It's if you the way I think about it is that I'm actively advising the company. I'm thinking about them, and I'm looking for opportunities to connect them, to support them, and sometimes just roll up my sleeves and do some of the work, uh, because I know that I'm directly adding value at the more of the worker level advising. From a board of directors perspective, you click up to a much bigger strategic picture, and it's much less about the day to day. On the board of directors, it would not be unusual to go an entire quarter and not have connection. You might get updates, you might see emails, you might see posts and things and comment on them, but there's no interaction. It's not a day to day advisory role. It really is much more of a, are we heading in the right direction? What big pieces should we be thinking about? How do we help structure this company to succeed in the long term? And so there's just a different level of altitude between advisory and board of directors. Does that make
And
sense?
yes, and then how does one evaluate those two on the same level? So I care about the company, I have the time, I love the other directors. Is that, or is there a different way to look at that?
For advisory, I tend to look a little bit more at the product and the CEO. And do I really believe in this product and that this is fulfilling an unmet need? And do I 100% believe in the CEO? So I want to see this particular company with this particular leader succeed. From a board of directors perspective, yes, I think those pieces are important, but I think the lens is much more around, is this a meaningful company that's doing something significant? And so it's a less about the team in some ways. I still think there's a lens of, yes, the CEO is the right person, they've got the right team, and so forth. But it's much more, I believe, in the cause and the mission and the North Star that they're heading towards. And I want to be part of it.
And your relationship with VC funds, is that a question I get a lot from CTOs is, hey, I'm interested in serving on boards. How do I do that?
Yeah, so the way that I started was advising. And it was through startups that I'd met. And it was very casual. And I said no to most of them because I was a little nervous about what it would mean and how much time it would take. And so it really had to check the box of, do I want to be associated with this product and this team? And do I believe in it? And so I would say the way that you get involved is go to some startup events, especially if you are working, you're already a leader in your company, and you're looking for something else in order to support other types of technologies and teams and people. That's a way to start. Connect with people first, because advising is about the relationship, and it's about, are they going to listen to you? Because frankly, if you're not being listened to, there's no point. A lot of the time we talk about it as coachable. Is this CEO coachable? Which fundamentally just means, are they actually engaging in a conversation, or is it all lip service and then they're going to go off and do something else entirely? And then it's just a waste of time. So don't be in an advisory position, which is what I say the 3-month trial is usually about. Don't make a commitment. Just say, I'm going to hang out with your team. Let me come in. Let me see what you do. Let me work with you. Let me sit in on a couple of sessions. And then you'll know whether this is something that you can actually add value. If you're excited, if you're looking forward to that meeting, if you are providing guidance and they are excited about taking it, and you see traction and they follow up with you, all of these things are pointing to there's value on both sides. Then I think you can sit into it and go, okay, let's have a more formal conversation about, I'd like to be more involved on a more regular basis. And that's how you'd start the advisory conversation.
Okay, got it. That is good. I too am on a few boards, and it is.
Is that your experience too?
It is my experience. I generally feel a little dirty when I have to talk about compensation on the advisory side. On the director side, you are really playing a fiduciary responsibility to the organization. So I can understand if the travel costs are covered and there's some shares allocated. But I as a true litmus test for me, it is, do I feel passionate about what this company is doing versus can I stack up my portfolio and be a professional board member?
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I'm on the board of our local school foundation, and I do that because I care deeply about the mission and what the place my kids go to high school. So there's all sorts of ways that you can get involved. Many people, advisors start with a nonprofit even before you go into an advisory. If you're just interested in a board position, nonprofits that you feel passionate about, that you can help and serve, will give you a really good understanding how boards work and whether that's even a good fit. And back to the startups, if you really just want to help a startup, you don't have to be on the advisory board. They look for help everywhere they can get it. You can just go help. It doesn't have to be in a formal position. If it's longer term, that's when I think, when you say it's a bit dirty, the conversation, I think it's more of a value conversation, which is, I do want to commit to being regular. I think showing up randomly and expecting to be compensated is not value on both sides. But if you're there for the long term, you're like, I can commit a year to this, you can expect X, Y, and Z from me, then I don't think you should feel dirty. I think you should just feel like it's just value.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think it's that commitment that at such and such a date, for such and such a period of time, you will be there. And I think that is what is being purchased.
I know you just like to help people too. I know, like, you're someone who likes community, likes helping, and is very generous. And I think that you don't have to change that, and you don't have to think of every relationship as an advisory one. It can just be, you're a community builder, you're really good at it, and it's part of your brand. And so the fact that you will help people is just who you are, and you don't have to get compensated for that, because you get fame and fortune anyway. Look at you.
So famous. That reminds me a little bit about a conversation I had recently with my wife, where I have this image in my head, which is this opportunity comes your way, and I see a square, and at the top of the square, I see the word opportunity. And then that opportunity will lead to relationship and benefit but mostly the opportunity turns into relationships with people.
Mm.
And a lot of time gets spent on defining the opportunity so that you can have the relationships, like, what is the compensation, what is my time commitment, all that stuff. And so if you can imagine the square, you have opportunity and then you have relationship. And I actually flip that.
Yeah.
I actually say relationships will lead to opportunities.
Yeah.
And so when the opportunity comes, so, hey, we want you this, we want you that, in your mind, don't look at the opportunity, but flip it and look at the relationship.
Yeah.
And then trust that whatever's going to happen is going to happen because you put the relationship first. And then let that cultivate the opportunity.
But it's so smart. I mean, that's how really smart salespeople do it as well, right? Connect first, create an authentic relationship, and then whatever happens. It's a lot of the time it's also the analogy as we talk about when it's startups looking for funding. If you ask for help, you'll get money. If you ask for money, you'll just get some help. So it's the same way. If you're going in saying this is an opportunity, that kind of like you're selling and no one's really going to be picking up on those vibes. But if you're genuinely interested and you say 3 months of building the relationship and seeing how it is, and I can tell you there's one company I really, really liked. This is about a year ago. It was in a field that I thought was incredibly important. It was a great team. And I spent hours and hours of my time sitting down with them. And I think I added a ton of value. But at the end of the day, after 2 months of doing this, when they asked me to take on a formal position, I had to say no because I didn't want to work with the team. And so it's as much for you in terms of relationship as it is for them or leading to opportunity. I think you just have to go in with that authentic desire to, I want to work on things that are important with people that I like, and then good things come.
And then to trust that they will say the things to you that you want them to say, versus fighting for the things you want them to agree to. And then if it's not forthcoming after X number of months, like you said, then it's like, okay, well, it's not. And I think a lot about the equity conversation, because a lot of people ask me, well, okay, what, as a CTO of a startup at this size, what kind of equity negotiations should I be doing? And I often think about how that's just, I understand why it's important, and I understand that you can't live in nirvana where everyone loves each other, and it is a bit of a dog-eat-dog world. But if you can just get them to a place where they are offering you equity because they just cannot imagine life without you, work towards that versus, hey, here's the opportunity, let's define my equity, let's define the vesting period, and now we can build relationship.
Yeah.
Genius.
I think the only thing that I would, because I think that there's a organic approach that you're suggesting, and I love everything about this. I just tend to put a little bit more of a clock on it and say, after a certain period, you should just sit down and have that conversation. And it doesn't have to be, I want this. It's just, I can see a longer term, do you? And let's talk about how this would work. And again, it doesn't have to be immediate. It could be another 3 months or another 6 months before they even think about wanting to, a lot of companies have a cliff that's a year, which is we want a lot of time and a lot of commitment before we actually even think about this. And I think that's smart. And so that relationship that you build will let you have that authentic conversation.
Yeah, I think also that I have a close friend who said to me, in those types of negotiations, you want to be the one saying no. You don't want them being the people saying no.
Yeah. You're the advisor.
So you want to be the one, because in the end, if you want to go back, you change your mind. You don't have to work on the energy to change their minds.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult, I think, because especially when you really want something, that's the hardest part, is when you feel like, whether it's employment status or whether it's just the desire to be with a company, you always have to be ready to walk away from those deals, and it is extremely difficult.
It is. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Do you want to talk about book writing?
Yeah, sure. We can spend a few minutes talking about the book and what the process is. It's
Okay,
kind of like building a product, except much harder.
I want to talk to you. Give me 1 minute. Note to self, don't drink this water right before you have an interesting conversation.
It's funny.
So I am about 20,000 words into my book.
That's fantastic. Congratulations. What's it
Thank you.
about?
I will indulge myself a little bit, so if you can bear with me. Initially I thought I would write about the first 100 days on the job as a CTO, as the new CTO to a company. And I know that there's the 90-day concept, but I was mostly looking at how I can base it on the promise that presidents make. In my first 100 days, I promise I will ABC.
Mm-hmm.
And that 100 days concept comes from specifically a US president who did that for the very first time. And that was Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 1930s, he became president right as the Great Depression was happening and was in full steam.
Mm-hmm.
And when he became president, he basically started a 100-day period. It turned out to be 100 days, but within a 100-day period, he basically built the New Deal and just enacted hundreds of laws to get the country back on track where it was this global depression. And so I thought, okay, I'll take 100 days and I'll break it into a couple of weeks and I'll just recommend what you do in each of those weeks. But then the more I got into the research on the 100 days, the more I got sucked into this historic vortex. And I learned so much about what he did. Just from a process standpoint, I'm trying to see if I can draw a line between a couple basic things that he did that a CTO can apply to when they land the job.
That sounds so interesting.
And then combining that with systems thinking, I think I'm onto something. So I think I'm having a lot of fun with the research and there's just a certain fear that comes over you when you start typing the words into the page. You're like, who am I? Why am I doing this? Who's ever going to want to read this? Who do I think I am? How do I write? When do you use punctuation? How should this be formatted? Why this is taking so long to write this sentence?
Yep.
You just went through all of that?
Every single step of it. Every single step. The pandemic is what actually caused us to finish, because writing a book, everyone says this, but it's just so hard to do. It's just you've got to write every single day. You've got to write a little bit, and it can be absolute rubbish, but you've just got to keep writing, because the whole process is editing. That's where it comes together. And so we had parts of the book for, I would say, over a year or 2 years, and the last 3-4 months had just pushed us into we're gonna make it happen. And then we just finished, our editor just finished with the book. And so that's very sobering, because what you have is you think you've produced this baby, you've done your edits, we have edited it dozens of times ourselves. We've edited co-authors with Heather, my business partner. We've read each other's, we've given each other feedback, and we believe it's pretty good. And then you give it to somebody else and they start tearing it apart. And then they tell you that you need to do more here, get rid of this. This piece doesn't quite make sense. So the process keeps going. And it's interesting because I kind of likened it to a product launch where It's voice of customer. We've been sending bits out. We've got interviews with product leaders from around the country that we've interviewed. So they've been listening to this and we've been testing it all along. And then this editor role is someone that's completely different. It's She's in the voice of a customer because she's telling you these things don't make sense to me. And so it's brutal customer feedback coming at you when you thought you were ready to launch. So that's an interesting experience.
And writing about products is kind of meta because you're writing about the thing that someone's giving you feedback on about the thing.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. But it's been so much fun finding the right editor.
So what's the book about?
The book is about, it's called Groundwork. And we've coached probably over 200 companies at this point, all the way from startups up to Fortune 50. So we have interacted with so many different teams and so many different industries and so many different types of teams. And we've always had a consistent approach to how you begin thinking about product. And so we've taken those three pieces, the three pillars, and the way why we call it groundwork is there's no point even ideating or prototyping or getting ideas in front of customers until you have these three pieces in place. And so the analogy, if I'm, we haven't quite picked one yet, but the analogy is you wouldn't plant without kind of getting your ground fertilized. You wouldn't build a building without creating a foundation. And so it's that piece. There's so much written about the art of product management, about how you think about how to build, what to build, all sorts of different sort of aspects of that. But this for us is where you start. It's ground zero. And so that's what we've talked about. So there's three pillars, and it's around your core customer and how you define that and how you find that. It's the customer problem so that you understand how to think about a problem way before you want to build or have an idea. You understand that it's something that someone actually cares about, needs, and is willing to pay for, which is an important piece. So it's not just a great idea that someone says, that's really cool, but they're actually willing to pay for you. And the third is how to think about needs. And so this idea about moving from what you think is an idea or what you think is potentially a good solution into solving an unmet need. And so if you put those three pieces together, then you can execute, right? Then you get all the machinery around agile or lean or whatever methodology, and you can go build effectively if you've got these three pieces right. So the first part of the book is those three pillars. The second is three practices that we say help you in always kind of feeling like you are thinking customer and acting customer. It's those daily practices that we want every product person to get familiar with. So that's the book.
I'm thinking of just how I screwed everything up.
Stop.
So the first pillar was defining your core customer.
Mm-hmm.
Second one was finding them.
The second one is defining the customer problem.
Okay, so it's who is your customer, what is
What's
their
the
problem, and then how do you...
What do they actually need? Not what they say or what they say they want, but what do they need? Because when you get into need, then you have a solution that they can't live without. Because a lot of the time, a lot of people build products that customers would like, or it's something similar to something else that exists, or it's a cool idea, but I'm not going to pay for it. I'm not going to buy it.
It's like the vitamin versus the pain analogy.
Yes, exactly.
So as much as I want to get into that topic, let's stay on the book topic. So did you just open Google Docs and you started writing?
Yeah, it's exactly right.
And how often did you, the two parts and the three pillars and the three things, was that a structure that emerged after many iterations, or did you pretty much have that nailed down in the beginning?
We had a general framework. So I would say, much like an architect, sort of diagram, we sketched out what we thought this would look like. And we thought that, it felt like these three pieces went here. And what we wanted to do was to have interviews of people, of product leaders that we felt did this really well. And so we mapped it out. We had a rough sketch, and then we broke it up. We took different parts each, and we started writing. We then went to a second level where we said, okay, there's a second structure. So now it's more of a blueprint rather than the high level sketch. It's a blueprint of, we want the pillars to be structured in a similar way that people feel familiar when they're reading this pillar. They go, I understand what it is. I understand how to think about this. I've got examples. And so that structure is a blueprint. And then we followed the blueprint. So we kind of, it was a little kind of like code, right? You had a structure, we went that way. And I think it was useful.
Well, and then also as product rebels, you've obviously, it's a tried and tested model. So really you're just documenting it.
We are, and we're showing examples. We're talking about things that we have been practicing in one way or another for a really long time between us, like decades worth of product leadership. And so we know the stuff works. We wanted a way for it to be approachable so that any team could pick this up, they could learn it, and they could do this. That's what we were going for. So you don't need years of product experience or being in corporations or having worked in this area. Literally, we want someone to be able to pick it up and go, I know how to do this now.
Yeah, and I think half the battle is just getting rid of those assumptions that because I had the idea, because I spoke with one person, I am now going to launch a whole initiative around it. Just to be like, okay, wait, there's some groundwork that needs to be done, and this is how to do it.
And also for a leader, for a CTO or a CEO, we wanted for them to have a way to ask the right questions, because a lot of the time they don't know that it's the groundwork that we're familiar with, especially when it's SaaS products or technology products. Often it's like, there's a great idea, now we're going to go build it. And we spend 80% of our time talking about how to build it. And so think about how much more valuable the time spent in building would be if you knew that the preparation for the customer and the problem were there. Then I think is so much more effective. We want to increase everyone's chances of being successful in the market.
So you said you interviewed some experts. So, and I don't know if my email invite got stuck in spam or...
Product leaders, my friend. Okay. Product leaders. Chief product officers was the key.
And by the way, Heather Samarin, shout out to you, my other favorite person. I actually met her before I met Vidya.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that they knew each other when I met the other one.
It was pretty funny when we actually realized we're all connected in that way.
So just to wrap up the book story, so finding an editor. So how many words did you write?
50,000.
Okay, 50,000. And I think I read that around 50, 60, 100,000 or less is basically where you want to land. And then finding an editor, how was that? Is that the next step? You basically finish the Google Doc and then you find someone to edit it?
So, yes. I think what you want is someone who you trust. So we interviewed different editors who had business experience, and then find someone that you want to work with. It's such an important part of your team, because this person you're trusting to shape your words in a way that you think you're going to like, you think are going to be right for your customer, and that you trust them. So that was a really that was an important part of the team. Then we had a designer. There's a designer for the cover. There's a designer for the layout, if you're thinking both for a print version and an ebook version. And then the biggest learning is the launch team. So we've hired someone who's managing the launch. And this is not a product launch where you would start and think about, I'm launching now, and then how am I going to get growth out of this? This is -3 months. So before you think about launching, you're breaking it up into, how am I going to get the right attention? Who are the pre-readers? Who do I want to have testimonials from? How do I create buzz? And then you start creating some media pieces. So there's so many pieces that lead up to the actual book being on the shelves, or the electronic shelves. It's a lot.
So just quietly uploading it to Amazon at 2 in the morning isn't going to do it.
Not if you want to be a bestseller, my friend. I know you will be. So when you're ready, I will give you all of those resources.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Vidya, well, this was wonderful.
Always wonderful
Always love
talking with
talking to you.
I can't believe it's been an hour.
I know.
It's crazy.